as an emotionally draining semester finally came to an end. Raymack suggested that Mary and I should accompany him to visit the Giza Pyramid Complex. He was very persuasive, telling me how important this trip was going to be for me, that it might provide us with unique material for the special anniversary edition of the Cairo International School Press Club magazine. On that unusually hot June day, the outside temperature was close to 50 degrees. The scorching desert heat was suffocating, and the glimmering desert sand resembled a sea of glittering gold, ready to melt and burn anyone foolish enough to walk on it barefoot. After a 2-hour drive from the bustling, chaotic Cairo, we finally arrived. The three of us got out of the car in the sweltering heat, dressed up in thinly layered white linen clothes, and our heads covered with wide-brim hats. These clothes, sturdy walking boots, and a backpack filled with our favorite goodies were all that we had with us for the day. Peering at the awesome scenery around me, I became spellbound. Looking at the enormity of the site's captivating beauty, there I was, staring at the pyramids before my eyes, so grand and majestic, wondering how humans could have ever built them. I began to imagine how a divine intervention must have been at work, providing the power and direction needed to guide these ancient architects and builders. As I began mumbling softly to myself, Raymack, amused by the expression on my face, began politely laughing and said, "Jonathan, that's only the tip of the desert iceberg. Wait till you get inside the pyramid." We began walking hurriedly toward the ruins of the enclosure wall, passing the tombs of the Western Cemetery, and there they were, 3 majestic pyramids without any obstacles between them and us. Raymack wanted us to visit the Temple of Khafre first, but something caught my attention. We saw 2 tall, dusty men struggling to carry a statue out, both of them wearing unusually tight, dark clothes, and I immediately thought that they were thieves. The 3 of us standing in front of them definitely was not part of their plan. As our eyes met only for a split second, they pulled the knives from their sheaths, hanging aside their hips, rushing toward our group. Before we could think of anything, Mary and I turned around, running as fast as we could, while Raymack went running in a different direction, trying to escape another thief. Suddenly the ground began to tremble. The surrounding dunes turned into an avalanche of flowing sand, like a landslide roaring into a deep pit. All of us, including the menacing thieves, had no time to escape from being swallowed by the gigantic mouth of this desert waterfall of sand. I woke up after what felt like an eternity, only to find everyone lying on the ground covered in sand. I quickly crawled to Mary and Raymack in an effort to wake them up. With our blurred vision, we began looking for a way out in what appeared to be a large basement. We collectively agreed to use a wall we just found, hoping to find a door or a passageway out. Now that we were all trapped inside, our hands were our only guide to navigate the ledges of the limestone wall. We decided to rely on the wall, hoping to find a door or passage. And in the obscurity of the room, our hands followed the limestone ledges of the wall. As we were progressing, I felt the shape of a lever. I instinctively grabbed it and pulled it down with all my strength. I had opened a secret chamber. The floor of this otherwise huge vault was covered with cat mummies laid around a glittering golden coffin. The ancient Egypt history buff that I am could tell it was the sarcophagus of a pharaoh. Stupidly, I screamed out with excitement, calling both Raymac and Mary to come and see. The two thieves heard me as well, quickly ran inside the secret room, and found us next to the sarcophagus. Their eyes lit up with greed and satisfaction as they discovered the huge, sparkling emerald adorning its lid. They rushed to remove it with their bare hands, but as soon as the stone was removed from its golden cradle, the whole chamber unexpectedly began to shake. Sand and soil began falling from the ceiling, and the sarcophagus suddenly burst open. A mummy jumped out like a jack-in-the-box. The grayish creature froze us with its piercing red eyes and began walking slowly around the room. In its wake, the ancient jars and cat coffins began oozing. Swarms of slimy black beetles and spiders and a giant snake of crawling critters were now following the mummy. The mummified cats also came back to life and began rushing in our direction, their razor-sharp claws ready to strike. Fortunately, I managed to dodge an attack, but one of the thieves wasn't so lucky. Before he knew it, a large cat jumped on him and bit his head off, sending it rolling to the side. It tore the rest of his body to pieces, blood splattering everywhere, feasting on its victim like a lion on a gazelle. Witnessing the fate of his friend, the other thief tried to escape by slowly walking backward toward the entrance. But his strategy had caught the attention of another feline zombie. However, as he was reaching the exit, the robber stumbled and fell heavily on the now open sarcophagus. The mummy immediately entered a state of wild fury, and reaching for his mouth, sucked him dry of any life or blood, leaving only a black, shriveled corpse. With the two thieves dead, we were the next on its list, and I was determined not to let anything happen to any of us. Raymac yelled that we should follow him. I quickly grabbed Mary before running toward him. Raymac was ahead of us, leading the way, while the mummies were still lagging behind. As we got out of the doomed chamber and into the corridor, Raymac quickly pushed a lever to close the secret door. Mary panicked and tripped on a weirdly shaped brick tile that was sticking out from the floor, and the ground under our feet suddenly began shaking violently, opening traps here and there in the corridor. Luckily for us, Raymac had some knowledge of the pyramid structure and architecture, and he told us that they were filled with deadly traps built to catch thieves and sacrilegious visitors. He then decided to use a stick to knock on each odd-looking floor tile to ensure they were safe to walk on. We began walking our way out carefully and slowly, following Raymac's smart trick to ensure our safety. As we arrived at the end of the corridor, we sighed with relief, thinking we had reached a safer pathway. Raymac was still leading the way. But as I was about to put my foot down on the wooden floor, hundreds of arrows simultaneously shot out in our direction. Raymac and I managed to crouch down just in time, but Mary reacted too slowly, and two arrows hit her in the shoulder and arm. Her face immediately turned white as a sheet as she fell to the ground. I wanted to scream in panic and anguish, but Raymac quickly pulled her aside. We slowly crawled our way out until we reached another path, covered in sand. We got up on our feet and began walking. Suddenly, the sand began sucking us up from below, and we were quickly drowning into the unknown. Our muscles and strength having abandoned us, we could no longer struggle and felt the end was near. Terrified and exhausted, we still managed to tell each other how much we cared, and that we would be forever thankful for our friendship and adventures together. As my tears were turning to mud and my lungs began suffocating, I suddenly fell into a small cell and rushed down a steel pipe. Was I dying? Was this heaven or hell? I couldn't tell where I was, or whether I was alive, but as I opened my eyes, all I could see was sand and a majestic pyramid. Mary and Raymac were beside me, slowly waking up. At that moment, we realized that we'd made it outside and that we were alive. Soon after, the police arrived at the scene along with a team of archaeological experts. The latter proceeded to dig deep under the temple and found the cat mummies as well as a sacred sarcophagus. However, it was still open, the emerald back in place, but the mummy was nowhere to be found. I guess the positive thing about all of this is how my article for the school magazine earned me a Junior Pulitzer Prize that year. But all that Mary and Raymac got from this story were severe nightmares that still haunt them to this day, and a profound fear and disgust for all things that were ancient Egypt.